Welcome, Jill, another PT. I'm always excited to have another physical therapist on the podcast, and I've just really admired your work. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Thank you. I'm really honored that you invited me. So thank you.
Well, let's launch in because I think it's always interesting. I'm curious, but I know people always want to know, like, how did you become a physical therapist? How did you decide that was your career path? Um, Even if it's not like what you would consider inspiring, just kind of what your thought processes are. And then we'll go from there. What happened after you graduated?
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a question I get a lot actually. Well, I knew that I always wanted to work with people. I knew that I didn't want to sit at a desk, and I knew that I wanted to work in something that was sort of, you know, health related. I actually, a lot of physical therapists sort of like had injuries as kids that sort of, maybe they had physical therapy themselves. They went into the field because of that. That never happened to me. I sort of skirted around that for most of my youth, but I just wanted to really work with people. And I kind of, I was like, oh, maybe I could be a physician's assistant. And then I was like kind of going back and forth between that and PT. Turned out you had to take organic chemistry to go to PA school. And I was like, I'm not doing that. So I was like, PT school it is. So I went right from undergrad. I was a kinesiology major. I went right from undergrad to PT school straight off. And kind of went into, outpatient orthopedics after that at a more sort of traditional clinic. But I got really burned out from that fairly quickly. So within 5 years of saying, I'm tired of doing what the insurance companies want me to do, being limited and put in a box in terms of what I think is the best, plan of care, um, being overworked. I decided to sort of break out on my own. And now I have my own place where I do sort of like a hybrid of PT and training and sort of a more lifestyle wellness model. But it's interesting because when I looked back, um, I sort of realized that maybe I didn't have these like acute injuries as a kid, but I did have sort of this like ongoing back pain issue that I don't even consider an injury because it was just something I kind of lived with. I remember my mom always asking my mom to like crack my back and like stand on my back. And like, I was just always doing that as a kid. And I think there was something in me that was like, I hurt all the time and I need to figure this out. Like, I don't know. That's something that hit me within the last year. I was like, oh my gosh, like I've hurt, like this isn't normal. I've hurt my whole life and that's not normal. And maybe that's just what drove me to sort of like want to figure out the human body and what I could do proactively myself as my own advocate to heal myself because I was just living with it day to day. So it was kind of, I just came to that revelation later in life.
Yeah. Well, I want to just go right into that, and we'll venture back into some of these other, like, what it's like to go kind of rogue, as I like to call it, as I did that 25 years ago. Before 24 years ago, whatever it was, before it was more common like it is now. But let's talk about pain, because I think it's so interesting, this word pain. And, I went through, I actually had a podcast and I was like, let's not use that word because your brain actually gets very attached to it. Like, can you describe it? But at the end of the day, it is, people understand it. What's interesting is people ignore it, or like you, maybe for many years adapted to it and don't realize that it's not, I guess normal is maybe not the word, but you're not sentenced to this life of
Yeah,
pain, of feeling the same way you do now.
right.
So let's start there. How would you say, because I'm sure this has a lot to do with stress in the body, trauma in the body,
Hmm.
how do you explain how these things show up in the form of pain?
Well, what do you mean by that exactly?
Well, so like people think, oh, I fell over and twisted my ankle and I had pain. Okay. So that
Sure.
is one form of pain. Of course, that's
Sure.
acute pain.
Yeah.
You're talking about this kind of nagging,
Uh,
consistent ache. Now,
yeah.
some of that, then we almost are trained in PT to look at that as like there's a tissue issue,
So
there's a tissue damage, right?
right.
But in
Yeah.
fact, that could be the case, or it could be other things.
Sure, sure. And pain science certainly isn't like my specialty area. I am not someone who knows everything about pain science, but you're right in that it is not just mechanical. There are a lot of other factors that go in somebody's experience of pain, we'll say. So, stress can elevate pain response. Past traumas can do the same thing. Um, if you lacking sleep, if you're hungry, if there's so many, it's sort of like the biopsychosocial model kind of goes along with it, like what, maybe you got a bad review at work that day or whatever it might be, you can feel more symptomatic in your tissues, in your body. They can hold on to some of that heaviness that's kind of throughout the entire body. As I've become older, I think some of my issues growing up were maybe related to some underlying hypermobility. I think some of it is related to trauma response. I think that there was some trauma in my childhood that probably did set me on maybe a more guarded path in my body. Maybe I didn't feel it in my brain. Maybe I put on a good face. Maybe I acted like I had it all together, but in my body, I was harboring tension constantly and still am. But as I've become older, I'm recognizing that. And I think that it's so important for people to recognize the influence of trauma on the tissues of their body, and that those addressing those are just as important as the physical therapy piece, working on the actual physical tissues.
Yeah,
So
I love that. And my next question is just like a massive one. So again, there's much more, and everybody was going to look into the show notes and find out how all you offer a lot more. But if someone were to come with you, or here they're listening right now, and they're like, "Gosh, I kind of have this kind of chronic ache in my low back or in my outer hip," or what are some of the questions that the starting of the inquiry people could investigate beyond just the mechanical, the structural issues, the physical therapy quote stuff?
yeah, I mean, I take a pretty broad history. I ask a lot of questions. It's why one of the reasons I left the more traditional model is so that I could take this time and really listen, because I find that so many people in today's medical system, that's probably the number one thing they're not getting is listened to.
Yeah.
And you're really missing so much when you're not listening to people and taking that time. So, what are some questions or maybe things that people will say? I don't know. I don't come out and I'm just like, did you have any
Yeah.
past trauma as a
Yeah.
kid? That's a little bit tricky. I think what cues me most is, we're observers. Physical therapists are really good at watching people. And so I watch them very carefully. I watch their body language. I watch the way they speak. I listen to the way their voice sounds. I listen to the way they tell a story, what is behind how they tell that story. What is the tone of the language and the words that they're using when they describe their pain or their story? How much are they going into, this doctor never listened to me, and I've been dealing with this so long, and I just, what is their tone like? What is their story like? And that kind of it just starts to paint a picture for me of how much this has been on them. You know what I'm saying? Like how heavy this has been on them for how long. And that gives me an idea of what they may be holding on to, what their self beliefs might be regarding their whatever condition they're coming in with, um, whether or not they believe that they can get better. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of people who sort of have been told certain things by other people. So I'm always like, well, what did that person tell you? What did that person tell you? And whatever that we get out of that conversation gives me an idea of what their beliefs have sort of been molded into over time, and how limiting that can be in terms of their recovery. So I wouldn't say that I'm really asking as many questions as I'm really just listening
Observing. Yeah.
moving and listening and getting sort of a feel. And that's why there's such an art to physical therapy, I think,
Hmm.
of really putting that all together and painting a picture and extracting some things and saying, oh my gosh, this is what's been going on with this person.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that you said that, and I think that is really a gifted therapist who's going to observe and really take in, like, kind of from an almost an energetic. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can even do it in an email sometimes when I have exchanges. Somebody just wrote me a few days ago and is just devastated, very young, in major pain, swelling of I mean, it sounds a lot like some kind of regional pain issue type thing, but it's all stemming from what she doesn't even know. Like, nothing really happened.
Right.
And what I feel and hear, even though she's not is like just desperation. Just this,
Yes.
I want to keep living. I mean, like, oh my gosh. And I've seen this over and over again with chronic pain patients. And it's just, and to your point, and I saw this with my dad, who was an orthopedic surgeon back in the day, and he would sit home at night and talk on the phone with clients who would call him, which is just unheard of. And when I say talk, I'm talking like he wasn't doing it. He was just,
Yeah. That's
and right. And he'd get off the phone and he'd say, people just need to be heard. And I
yeah.
thought, oh, because they're calling him, they want more of a prescription, more pain medicine. And he's like, I can't do that, but tell me it's just like they need to be heard. And I think there's such an art, like you said, in doing that and recognizing that the physical therapy can't be separated from the other parts of the body. We are not just a body. The body informs the nervous system and that's informed by our emotions, our history, the way we like relate to the world. So it is a real gift to do that, to just listen and observe.
And to connect it further for people who by the time they come to me, it's sort of like, yeah, well, it started with this like foot thing, but now it's in my hip and now it's in my shoulder. And I just feel like I'm so out of whack. And I'm like, well, I had a lady yesterday. I said, well, what's going on? Well, she said, well, I tore a tendon in my foot and my doctor told me that I can't bend my toes back at all. And I'm like, well, how the heck are you going to walk then? Like, what?
Right.
You need dorsiflexion in your toes. What? And like, so she's not in a boot, nothing. She's just trying to get weight off her toes. And while she's doing that, she's, squeezing the back of her hip and her pelvis and she's twisting her body in weird ways. And she starts to just self-organize her entire body in this completely different movement pattern that is just creating a tension and a torque throughout it. And I just had to sit her down and I said, we got to find another way for you. Like, and
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to have to walk and you have to move that toe. I know.
right. But
I
she
even see
needs that.
people who have like bunions or, that
Yeah.
kind of rigid toe and they're like, oh, my doctor said it's not going to get better. I'm like, okay, bone, even though it's not like this guy here, it's not like a brittle thing. It is malleable, and you're either going to get worse or you can possibly get better. So here are your paths.
Yeah. I mean,
So
people, I mean, I've been known to be a very blunt person and I will give it to people fairly straight in a very, kind and respectful way. But I'm like, listen, people are just like, I've lost hope. And I'm like, people lose so much hope because they only know what they know and they've lost hope with the tools that they have available to them because those tools maybe haven't worked for them yet, or maybe they've only gotten them to a certain point and they can't get beyond that. But that, if you want that to be your ending point, that's fine. But there's always a fight left. There's always something else that can be done, that can be investigated. There's always another direction. So you can stay where you are, or you can continue to put in that action and continue to fight for a little bit more. And I do believe that is possible in pretty much everybody who I've seen ever.
I agree. I agree. And it's just, and I think also what a landscape to live in, that there's possibility versus no hope. I mean,
Right. The
right?
mindset.
Oh my
More.
gosh.
Yeah.
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 So what are your thoughts on moving through pain? Like, this is always this kind of,
Yeah.
I think in PT again, the way it's addressed is, first of all, the stupid 0 through 10 scale, which I personally am like, I'm not sure how helpful that is to somebody. Maybe it
Sure.
is, but I didn't find it ever helpful.
Yeah.
And I think yeah. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, somebody's coming, they're scared. But what are
Right.
your thoughts on moving through pain?
Yeah, so I used to be very
Hmm.
much, conditioned as a new grad PT to be like, stop doing the things you're doing. Like, obviously, those things are like hurting you. So why are you going to keep running? Why are you going to keep, doing that move in yoga, like whatever it might be? And over the years and time, I've recognized that that's not helpful and actually detract often from their ability to progress. So I am now a huge uh, promoter of movement. People are actually surprised when I tell them, please continue to do this. Oh, I can do that. Oh, okay. Are you sure? Yes. Please keep walking. Please keep moving. Well, what about this? Well, let's find you something different that you can do that get you the same whatever benefit you want out of that activity. So that's what I always have to ask. Well, why is it you want to do this piece of equipment? Well, I like this part of it. Well, let's find you something else that can get you the same feeling or whatever you're trying to get. So, big proponent of it. Um, Modify. I'm there to help people continue to do the things that they want to do, but in a way that is more serving for their body. So, there is a group of people that'll say, "Oh, don't do yoga. Yoga's making you worse." No, yoga's not making you worse. You just got to change the way we're doing yoga. We need to watch somebody move through these poses and figure out, oh, wait, yeah, that doesn't look too right. Let me see if we can adjust this. Let's change this. Let's do this a little bit differently. How does that feel? That feel better on your body? Yeah, that feels great. Okay, there you go. Keep going and keep doing your yoga. So it's just like, let's just make an effort.
Oh, I love that. And on that note, just really quickly, as a non-yogi, kind of, you can just tell us the secret. Like, what do most PTs think about yoga, for, in your opinion, like, or what you've heard?
I don't want to speak for most PTs,
Yeah.
but I think that from what I've heard from clients,
Yeah.
right? Like, I went and saw this other PT and they told me that yoga would, and it's all this negative language like I was talking about before. And I'm like, yoga isn't the problem. I
Yes.
think most PTs, I would put myself in this category. I don't, it's, if we have any exercise or movement practice that we're doing, and that's all we're doing, and we're not really doing much else to sort of create, uh, to build a foundation that makes that practice more efficient and safer for our body, that can lead to trouble, right? So I want people to continue doing the movement practice that they really love. However, they may hit this point in that practice where they go, you know what, I probably need to do some strength training on the side so that I can do the yoga that I really love, that I like to do for my head and my mental health and my, all of those other benefits that I love out of it. But I need it to feel better for my body. And I may need to pick up some weights and I may need to do some cross training type stuff to make that, so that I can continue doing that. And so I think that's how I look at yoga, just like I would with endurance running or any kind of, sport like that. That's a lot of repetitive stress. It's the same concept. Like, they may need to step back, do some strength training so they can be more, it can be more beneficial for their body
Yeah.
over time. We're
Yes.
talking longevity stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I'm all about that. And that's why really what I'm teaching is really a movement practice, and yoga
Yeah,
is part of it. It has a lot of physical therapy drills and functional movement in it. And one of the things we do a lot in lit is the developmental stuff on the ground. And,
sure.
it's like 1 out of 50 people I hear, well, what about, I don't feel really good about getting on the ground. And I'm always like, what? Where did that happen? Like, we need
Yeah,
to be able to get on the ground for so many reasons.
yeah.
And then I look on your Instagram and you have like what, an 80, 90, I don't know how old she was. And she's like getting up off the ground without her hands. So I I know I explain all that stuff ad nauseum because again, people will have that fixed mindset. Oh, but what about if we're not comfortable getting on the ground?
Yeah.
What do you say to somebody who says that?
Yeah, well, that post that you're talking about, that went completely viral. That was an 84-year-old client of mine getting off the ground on one knee, split
Yep.
knee, no hands, back up, back down, no hands. It's a goal I have for every single one of my clients.
Yes.
I tell them that the first day, and they look at me like I'm crazy, and I'm like, sorry, like You have your goals. I have
Right.
mine.
I have mine, and you'll be able to do it. I promise. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I explain why, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, but I just there were so many comments on that post that were like so negative, right? Like, I can't do that. I can't kneel. My knees are bad. This is impossible. This poor lady, blah blah.
Right. I know. This is exactly. Oh, I've had people with double knee replacements do this, and I want to be like, talk
Double
to
knee.
them, right? I mean, they realize like, even if I've had a surgery, I'm going to be able to need to get off the ground. I'm going to be able to go into these big ranges of motion. Whether it's a pure safety thing or function, you need them for both.
Am I saying this is going to happen for you today? No, absolutely not. And I'm not saying it's safe for you to start doing it today either. But I'm saying that these are goals that are attainable and are so good for your health. And to just purely dismiss them as like I can't do this is it's sad to me, actually. It's very sad that that's sort of the mentality that a lot of people are in. And unfortunately, I think that oftentimes um, it is pushed by our medical system sometimes. The woman I saw yesterday with the toe, she was 70 and her doctor just said, well, you know, you're
You're
not
getting
doing
old. You're not going to get any better. Yeah. Yeah.
quickly. And she's like, okay, well, I'm extremely active. Like,
Right. Yeah. Hello. Well, and this is a problem too, because it's medical system. And then it's like, well, in our culture, culturally, like you get older, you move to one floor, you get
right.
elastic things on your shoes, all this stuff. It's like we're just minimizing our movement variability in this way, like, well, we're all going to decline, so let's just make our environment versus let's keep our environment the same and stay healthy, and maybe we'll be able to stay in that environment. I mean, my mom is 80 and she's in the same house I grew up in, and my dad died 4 years ago, and people are like, when's your mom going to move? And I'm like, she'll never move. She has like, I won't even tell you how many animals. She has them all, like, but she's going up and down 2 or 3 flights. And it is the thing, I'm sure, that's keeping her healthy and agile. And she gets down on the ground and does all the stuff that I tell her to do. No problem. Gets up without using her hands. And
It's so healthy for like a culture to see older people getting down on the ground. And I say that to my older clients. I say, you trust me, you don't want to be the grandparent who has to sit in a chair and look down at their baby playing on the floor. I said, you don't want that kind of relation. Or maybe you do, but I would love for you to have a different relationship with your grandchild. I would love for you to be able to get down on the floor with them. It's very important for you. It's very important for them. And it's just for children to grow up and see older people in their lives down at their level, getting on the floor. It's going to create a culture for them that is driven around movement and physical activity. And I think that's so important. My mom's a very, she modeled that very well for me. And I think that's part of why I ended up in the field that I'm in.
yeah, no, I agree. It aging. We should embrace it. We should. It's not about fighting it. It's about like believing that we can stay functional, stay healthy, stay active, stay joyful in our, but we're going to have, what we might have gotten away with in our 20s, we have to pay more attention to, right? It's just, you've got more years of living in a certain way. So you've got to work with that. But it's totally possible. And I think it's something, it's like when they put stuff in the children, I was a presidential order, like getting the kids active. It's like, how about like making sure that we promote aging well and don't just talk about hearing aids and canes and stuff. But
creating assisted
yes,
devices, applications are in our environment. Let's just like keep ourselves very active in what we have.
yeah.
I'm
Okay,
with you.
yeah. So you talk a lot about breathing, and breathing is, everybody's like, we all breathe, but what is it that we can do to? Well, why is paying attention to breathing important?
Well, that's like such a huge
I know,
question.
right? I know. I'm sorry, Jill. I'm like throwing all the big ones at you.
No, that's okay. Breath work is going to be, breath work's always been in yoga, right? But breath work for general health, I think, is going to really hopefully start becoming a much more important research topic, especially after COVID. I think we're really going to start seeing a lot more come out of that, which is great. But it's good for so many like medical health benefits. But for me as a PT, it's so important. I've been using breath as a way to help with joint position, with improving like length tension relationships of muscles for, muscular imbalances, things like that. And for being able to help people modulate and change, internal pressures so that they can expand areas of tension in their body and create tightness in areas that maybe aren't getting that tension that might be needed. So that's kind of how I'm using it, and really breath work from like, oh wait, we have like these shoulders and scapula that are like attached to a rib cage, but like in PT school we just like pretended that a rib cage didn't exist and like kind of just like jumped over the pelvis, and it's like, wait a minute, we have lungs inside of our rib cage that we breathe with. Wait a minute, maybe we can influence the position of the ribs and the rib cage through breath work so that we can change the position of a shoulder and a scapula to allow it to move in a healthier way. Maybe we can, activate and connect with our diaphragm, which is going to create internal pressure into our abdominals, which is going to create pressure down into the pelvis. Maybe we can connect with our pelvic floor better. Maybe we can use that breath to release the back of the hips and all those tight, deep hip rotators and our psoas and all those muscles that are always chronically tight. Maybe we can connect with the diaphragm, which has fascial attachments to the psoas, to get that muscle to let go. So lots of reasons.
Yes, yes. Okay, so if you had somebody and for anybody that might be like sitting and listening to this, do you have any tips for how to pay attention to breath? I mean, I do think that obviously, I liked how you said your breathing can help with postural changes,
Yeah.
but also becoming more aware of your posture can help. I mean, it's a two-way street, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's lots of ways to build that awareness piece, obviously. Um, you're looking at a lot of different things. We're looking at, speed of breath, like, are you taking shallow breaths? How quickly are your inhales? How quick are your exhales? Where are you breathing into? Do you feel expansion happening more at your chest in the front? Do you feel it more through your belly? Do you feel it more through your lateral, the sides of your rib cage? Do you feel anything going into your back of your rib cage? Or is that just like, a big dark hole? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where a lot of people have tension, is down that whole back line. And I think with yoga, sometimes that's one of the things that I like to educate people on, because there is so much emphasis on chest opening or what open hearts, which is fantastic for getting like expansion towards the front. But when we pattern the same pattern, we ignore the other side of the pattern, which is expansion in the back. And that's when I start to see a lot of those winging scapulas, the shoulders that hurt with the chaturangas and all that kind of stuff, when we're not putting equal expansion all the way around the rib cage. So just kind of trying to like tap into that a little bit. And then also like, are you able to slow your breath down? How long can you exhale fully and get all that breath out? And can you do it for a long time and softly and slowly and kind of ration it out? And then how long can you pause? And then when you breathe in, are you able to take a nice clean breath in, or does it feel like super panicky? Okay. And if it feels super panicky, that's an indication to me that you may be stuck in a pattern that's sort of more that shallow breathing pattern, more inflated pattern, and you have a hard time getting your air out of the system and kind of compressing a little bit so that we can get good clean air in. So I look at obviously a lot of different things.
I love that. I think that's so important, and I agree with you. When I started to really shift the way I was looking at yoga, because I was kind of put it in a box and kept it separate from my PT. But then I was looking at all this major extension patterns, and a lot of it is just kind of collapsing into joints, quite frankly. It might be pulling in some tissue, but it's just more of it's a big thrust. And when I started just teaching like lifting up in the side and breathing into the side ribs, it was, people were so resistant. I was like, you're not any less spiritual if you don't go like this, right? Like I had to start making a joke of it because I would go and start teaching and I'd be saying it, being in front of people, and the habit was so this.
Yeah.
And, you're right. It changes the way you breathe. It changes the way you connect to your core because, of course, the breath supports the core supports the breath, all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and not to like, there's different types of breathing for different types of purposes, right? But the belly breathing thing too, like belly breathing is not diaphragmatic breathing. Like it's not the same.
Amen. Oh my gosh. We could go.
So
This could be a whole thing because people are
I was like,
my teachers will write me immediately after seeing an Instagram post when somebody says, "Relax your belly and breathe into it," and I'm like, "Okay, that's good. What are you trying to do? If you're trying to relax and go to bed, great. If you're trying to move through space and support your weight, no, that's not what you want to do. Your lungs are up here. You need some core support down here. That doesn't mean like hold your breath, but yeah, there's just there are so many nuances, and you can't just insert and do it all the time because then you're not going to be effective. Just like our muscles have different demands, we don't just always say hold it in, hold your bicep in a concentric contraction because that's the best place for it to be.
right. And our body's just one big pressure system, right? So if
Yeah.
our is like leaking forward into our abdominal wall, then we're not getting that pressure expansion anywhere else. So where you feel tight in your chest, like in the front of your shoulders from sitting at your desk all day, or where your low back feels tight and that you're not getting that expansion into the rib cage up top because you're letting it all come forward. I work a lot with women with anybody really with the pelvic floor to help support the pelvis. Same deal there. If all your pressure goes forward, you're not getting that good, like stimulating sensory to the whole pelvic bowl to really like get in touch with your hip muscles.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know. And manage the different demands. Like the pelvic floor isn't just like this or just like this. It has to needs to be responsive. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Lengthen and contract, and it needs that stimulus from up above, from the thoracic diaphragm, to come downward and help create that relationship.
Yeah. It's always, I mean, it's so interesting, all the things. And I think that's what I think going out on your own, like you did and I've done, is allows you to bring in the different ingredients, because there are so many, into, just raising the bar in high quality function and movement.
Yeah.
What, was there like one specific thing, or was just a cumulative stress of just working in a clinic and not feeling satisfied with the time you got? Was there anything that just was like, I can't do this anymore and I'm opening up my own? Or
I think it was like a slow burn. Like um, I was just like, I was finding myself on my lunch breaks having to go into a treatment room and nap for like 20 minutes. I would set an alarm and because I was like, I can't do the second half of this day.
mm-hmm.
I would just not being able to have any time in my day to like get my oil changed or go to a dentist appointment. Like the flexibility of my schedule was getting tiresome, but also mostly the limitations I felt. Like PT school, they're like, oh yeah, like Vision 2020, like you're going to be totally autonomous, and like, like you can do anything you want as a PT, and like they don't have to go to a doctor before they see you. And it's like, wait a minute, I thought that's the way it was going to be, and it just wasn't. And I was like, I don't want to be put in this box. I didn't feel good, like morally and ethically telling somebody like that's here for their knee, and then also tells me that like their shoulder's bothering them, that like they have to go back to a doctor and like talk to them about it and like get an order, and like then they can come back. It didn't feel good to me. Like I was like, this is garbage.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was just tired of it, and I was like, I just got to get out and I got to do my own thing. And it started to really wear on me, to the point where I was in a previous relationship, and it like I was in it tore up my relationship because I was just negative and in a bad mood all the time, and I hate my job and my bosses, and I was just like, this is nutty. Like, I got to get out of here. So it did hit a breaking point with just all of those things.
So for anyone who is listening, because I do have a lot of PTs, and I do get a lot of PTs on here who are, working for themselves. Like, what what were the first steps of opening your own practice? I'm not talking about logistics of like getting all the, the money
Yeah.
stuff in play or whatever. I'm just talking about like for yourself and how you
Okay.
started to promote yourself and get people to know about what you were offering.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Well, for me, the biggest barrier was overcoming like fear.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was like, I can't do this. I know nothing about business. I am a PT. Like, PT school, they don't teach anything about
Yeah.
business. Chiropractors had it
Aren't we
made.
all? Aren't we all? Like, what? I still to this day, I feel like some days I'm like, this is what adulting is like. And I still don't think I'm an adult. I'm like, what am I doing?
Right. So I was just like, I can't do this. I don't know anything about, accounting or doing my books or like getting it was very overwhelming to think of like all the things I had to do. But I just sort of like had to accept help for that. My husband came in and was like, I don't care what it is that you need to make this happen. Like, I will do it for you. Like, whatever
Oh,
you need, I will help you. So accepting help, which is sometimes hard to do, and knowing that you have that help can be extremely motivating and empowering to get over that hump. Um, but after that, for marketing and getting the word out, I, honestly, it's kind of what we were talking about before. Like, your skill set, in my opinion, is sort of like 10% of what you bring. So I being the best PT in the world and just considering that is going to like build your business, I don't think is the right strategy. I think you really have to, if you're, I do a cash pay model. So it's like people are, they're going to pay their own money, and you better be bringing something that they're not getting somewhere else. So they can get a pretty good PT somewhere else. Right.
mm-hmm.
You got to bring that listening piece. You got to bring that, you know what? The advocate piece, like, I don't know if I this isn't really my scope, but I'm going to find somebody else for you. And you go and do that, and you go the extra step, and just being like that all around person and building relationships with people and being truly authentic to who you are and why you want to be there, and not just thinking like I'm just trying to make money, but really continuing to think on that path of why am I doing this? I want to help people. And that will carry you through to the end, and you'll just sort of start picking it away at it. My marketing is not towards doctors because they're like, oh, you don't take insurance. We can't refer to you. Well, you
Yeah.
can,
Yeah.
you just won't.
Yeah.
But so it's like, I market to like, other allied health professionals, other massage therapists and acupuncturists and, trainers and other people who we all share the same client. Like, so thinking of, whoever you're trying to get in your door, who are the other people that person's also going to,
mm-hmm.
they
Yes.
going to the running shoes store. Okay, well, go talk to those people and tell them who you are, or whatever it might be. So just kind of thinking that way in terms of like what your referral source may not be what you think it was when you were working for a traditional model, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally does. And I love that I think that it's the nurturing piece, it beyond just the intelligence and experience that, yeah, you're taking care of someone and you're pulling for them and you're going to, do all the things you can to make sure that, that they walk away feeling better in general, just like healthier in every way.
Even if it's just better peace of mind,
Yes.
maybe I didn't actually make much progress on whatever issue it is, but they feel better. They feel more secure. They feel like they're in good hands. They feel like they have a plan. They feel like someone's there for them. Those things, those are the things that have somebody coming back in for a second visit. Okay.
Absolutely.
Not so much like, oh, my shoulder feels so much better when I walked out the door. Though you might want to make sure you give them a little bit of some of that.
Yeah.
But most of it's going to come, that repeat business is going to come from a relationship and a connection that you have built with somebody from the very first visit.
Yes. So as somebody who's doing this for others, I can imagine that you must have like you have some probably non-negotiable self-care tools. Or is there something more you could be doing? I mean, what do you do for yourself to kind of, right? Because people sometimes look at it like it is this, whatever in some game, like I'm putting out all this, and therefore I've emptied myself. And I think when you are caring, you get a lot in return. So it isn't to at all say like, we as caregivers are only give pretty, so then we have to go like fill ourselves back up. I think I get so much from the people I work with. I think it's an absolute two-way street. So I think that's important to clear up. Nonetheless, it is important to be able to come with that full kind of high vibe by taking care of yourself on the outside as well. So do you have some things that are like, I have to do this to be my best Jill self?
Yeah,
At home and at work. We know that usually at home, that's where it really falls apart.
that's what I was going to say. That's where
Yeah.
totally right. Like the job is so rewarding. Everybody knows that who's a PT. It's such a rewarding job, but like it's also draining. Everybody knows that too.
Yeah.
It's really draining. You're spending your whole day with people who hurt for the most part. And that's very challenging emotionally for you. Over time, you probably don't even realize it. And so I think that the what it's doing to you ends up coming out in other ways, like being short with your partner, or being snappy, or flustered, or feeling whatever it is.
Yeah.
Those things happen, and it took me a long time to recognize that connection. And once I did, and it also took me a long time to figure out what I needed to do, what would work for me. My husband would always, when we first met, he always how's your day? And he wanted to do this thing, like, how's your day? How'd your day go? How'd your day go? And I was like, I don't want to talk about my day. Like, I don't want to talk, like, because I'm talking to people all day and he's sitting at a computer all day, which I get it. He wants to talk, but I realized I needed to communicate with him that I might need like 30 minutes to an hour of not talking. I might have to go upstairs. I like to take a shower. Like, there's something about like just getting
cleansing the day. Yeah.
I don't know, it's just a restart for me. So I like to get a shower, and then I come down and I'm like a much more, sane person. So a shower works for me. Just having to step back, setting those boundaries of like, I can't do all the things that everybody needs right now because I'm still feeling a little bit uneasy, on edge from my day, and just sort of being a better communicator, I think, is something I'm still working on. I'm not going to sit here and act like,
oh gosh, I think that's lifelong. Like, oh, I could have done that a little bit. I think that's,
but I'm certainly like more aware of the things I need to work on.
Yeah, my husband's the same way. He mostly works and doesn't interact with a lot of people, and he'll be like, like a little puppy. Hi, yes. And then I'm just like, I've been talking to people. Yeah. So it is kind of funny, like just being able to say like, it's not you, but I need to be by myself. And I think
I need to do something active that's by myself. Usually that's before I come home. So I like to go to the gym. It's not like I have to do this like crazy workout every time, but I need some time to like either go to the gym, go for a walk. Like if it's nice out, I live in a beach town, so go out to the beach, just something that's like alone time.
Yeah.
I had a really young one. I didn't do that. And I had a problem stepping away from personal, and it was a mistake. Like I just realized how important that was.
So I'm curious, just from like, again, not that everybody's different, but I'm genuinely curious. What do you do knowing that you have this background that has some hypermobility syndrome? What do you feel like you need to get in regularly? I'm not talking about necessarily every day, to keep your body feeling its best. And I'm imagining it's going to be strength training, but I don't want to take that away. Yeah.
It is strength, and strength was not something I had a strong background in. It was not something I was comfortable with. You know as well as I do, PT school does not teach you how to prescribe exercise. It doesn't teach you anything about exercise. It's shocking, actually. And so that's something that I've really had to learn on my, through time. But when I did start to learn that, there's something like, You can have weights higher than 15 pounds and lift them.
How about those grocery bags that you sometimes like try because you want to make it in on one trip? That's usually more than 15 pounds. But anyway, yeah.
So for me, like creating that good, healthy tension in my body
Mm-hmm.
was helpful in reducing sort of that artificial tension that I was trying to create to support a more hypermobile system. Not to say that it's great or perfect by any means, but it is certainly helpful. And I can feel when I, go on a trip and I don't work out, or, there's time, I'm sick or whatever it might be, I feel my body start to creep back into the achy places. And I just know I got to go do something about it. And that means I have to go back to the gym and I have to start building up that strength again. And within a day or two, I start to feel better.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing. And I think just being like confident that there is a solution and now you have it. And it might not be perfect and but you have something that you can do to help yourself, and you don't feel so helpless in this like, this thing that just keeps coming back and I don't know what to do about it.
Exactly. I think it's so true to be able to find something, and I think this is fairly novel, at least in the PT world, certainly in the yoga world, but this like idea of if something is bothering you, you might need to stretch it more. And in fact, a lot of times we need to actually bring strength to that area because it's like signaling, and we're just interpreting that signal as like, oh, it feels like it's all constricted. I need to stretch it. And can you just explain just briefly before I let you go, because I know you've been talking here for a while, why that's effective for somebody like you with a hypermobility syndrome, or anybody who might be sitting around at a desk and rounded shoulders and feeling slumpy, why strength training actually might be, and that strength training can be weight, it could be body weights, it could be a variety of things. So you don't have to, people don't sometimes just picture like, I'm not a gym person, I'm not going to go there. So it doesn't have to be that.
It's not like you have to be even lifting weights, but it is like creating this tension in the body, these isometrics. So sometimes in yoga, like, for example, you'll see, you're kind of hanging in the pose and you're just flowing to the next one and you're hanging in that one. And there's no true.
Not in my type of yoga, Jill.
I know.
No, but I know what you mean. Yes.
You're right. You're totally right though. I shouldn't generalize that.
No, I know, but yes, that's absolutely a very, very common vinyasa flowy. Right. You're hang to joints and you're going, because people think that's what they should be doing. They think, oh, the goal is to get as bendy as possible, when in fact I say hold into yourself as much as possible.
Right. So you've got it. I mean, it's just adding load to those same concepts.
Yep. Just got to. Yeah, adding load is going to, first of all, anytime you add load, you're going to get more kind of novelty. The brain is going to start paying attention more, right? Because it's a different amount, and then the muscles are going to have to come in. You've got these motor units, they're going to be recruited, all of these things. So you're just getting, actually, in a way, it's like pumping energy into an area that has been sucked on, Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a little one of those.
Yeah.
But I think that classic example is like the hamstrings, right? So like my hamstrings feel tight. It's like, well, when I do a hamstring test on you, your leg's like behind your head, like your hamstrings are not mechanically tight. Like, let's get real with that, right? But they feel tight because they're like craving, they feel threatened sometimes. Like it's like they're so over lengthened that they don't have the hold that they need to support your body, and they feel threatened, and they're like, oh my gosh, like if you stretch me anymore, I'm going to lose it, and this whole body is going to lose its composure. So it's like we need to create the tension needed in that system to support the posturing. When I say posture, I don't mean like shoulders back. I mean like the overall alignment of how we're supporting and setting up our whole body, from our feet to our pelvis and our rib cage and our head, all the way up. And it starts from like an anchoring, I call it, of like that hamstring on that pelvis to hold that in place, as sort of like an anchor point for everything else to work off it. Okay. And so that's just one example of a muscle that we just need to hold a little bit more of that tension in. But I think it's hard for hypermobiles because, for lots of different reasons, but they're tired. Like their bodies have to work harder to posture. to hold themselves up against gravity because their ligament integrity is more lax. So they're not able to create that internal sense of stability around their joints. So their muscles are like, well, if the ligaments aren't going to do it, we'll hold on super extra tight. So they are just tired and fatigued from having to hold you up all day long. And so it's hard sometimes for people with hypermobility to strength train because it's incredibly taxing on their body, and they feel very burned out, and it's hard to sort of stick with it. So I think that getting into strength training is important, but understanding some of the limitations, if you are one of those people that feel like this just wears me out, then trying to find sort of that middle ground is important.
Yes. Oh, well, I could talk to you forever. I can't wait to meet you when I come down to Charleston.
Yeah.
And I want everybody to know all about you. So can you share, like, we'll have this in the show notes, but where would you like people to come and find out more about you?
Yeah, well, I'm mostly visible on Instagram, Jill Zimmerman PT. I post a lot on Instagram. I post a lot of free content that for people tell me is really helpful. So I did that purposely. When COVID started, I really just wanted to share what I know and to help people with however I can, because I want to empower them to get the help that they need from whoever it is in their community or whatever. But if you don't know, then you can't go ask somebody else for help. So they can find me there. And then from there, you can find my website and everything like that. But that's probably the best place to find me. And my website is perfectlyfitcharleston.com if you're not on Instagram and you just want to kind of
Check it out. Check it out. I know. Oh, that's so wonderful. Well, I love what you're doing. And we didn't even get into the fact that you have great humor with it, and you're very humble, and you just share a lot. And I just really have appreciated talking to you now, but also getting to know you on Instagram. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks. And make sure you get in touch with me when you come to Charleston, and
I will. We'll have a chat. All right. Everybody who's listening, go check out Jill. And as always, I'm pulling for you.